Yo, and welcome back to Creeps and Crimes
Podcast.
I'm Taylar.
I'm Morgan. Happy Thursday and happy episode 225.
225, and happy me and Morgan not having to hold our mics anymore.
Look at it, guys.
Look at this if it's up on YouTube already.
I was so scared coming into the studio today because I kept getting these texts.
It's a war zone.
It's a
job
construction site. Like, take your time. And I'm like, what is going on? I was so scared, guys. It looks great.
I vacuumed it before she got here. I was profusely sweating. I was cussing like I did work on a construction site. I mean, it was a crazy day, but we got new mic stands that attach to the bottom of our chairs.
So nice. So no more like weights and like having to dunk,
knocking it over and shit, and also not having to hold it. But I'm like feeling this need to like crunch over.
I'm like
I don't know what to do with my
fidgeting
hands.
with my hands.
Like, I want to hold it in
do
my
I just
hand.
twiddle my fucking thumbs?
I
Or like,
guess.
what am I supposed to do really?
So I have a very, very, very important question for our healthcare workers, specifically I say the women, but I will say the people, but for the most part, every time I've ever gone, it's a woman at the front desk. I have some questions for you guys that I need you guys to respond, because this is what I realized. So you know how before you call a doctor to make an appointment, you have like a little walkthrough with yourself beforehand. Mm-hmm. And I have a script for my like every 3-month checkup that I have to go to for my Adderall that I can't with you twiddling your thumbs. I looked over at Morgan. She was dead ass twiddling her thumbs. So,
in slow-mo.
Yeah, literally in slow-mo. So, and I just feel like a little short little girl right now.
I know. I'm like trying not to do it.
So anyways, my point is that, you know, whenever I call for my every 3-month checkup with my Adderall, and the script that I typically use is, let's say it's Rachel that answers the phone. Hey, this is Rachel. And I'm like, oh, hey, Rachel, this is Taylar Fetzner, birth date 6/27, and I need to get an appointment with Dr. Snicklefritz sometime this week. Snicklefritz for my Adderall checkup. What's his next available appointment? Oh, okay, yeah, so we can get you in on this date. Okay, awesome. Thanks so much, Rachel. Have the best day. Hang up the phone. See you then. Bye. Bye, queen. Hang it up, right? Well, the other day when obviously when I was deathly ill, when I was on my deathbed, when I was like dying last week, I had to call to get an appointment. And used to back in the day with my age, it's been like quarterly. I've been like deathly ill quarterly now. Back in the day, as you guys know, you've been here since then, it used to be like every 6 months. Every 6 months I would have like one little sickness. By the way, I'm not cool with the quarterly ones. I'm ready to get rid of those. I don't want to be a part of this anymore. I would like to end this generational curse that I've entered into. I'm done with it. Before I called, I like walked myself through like, okay, like what am I going to say? What am I going to say? And I was like, I got to go off the same thing. But meanwhile, I'm like hacking up a lung. I sound like this because I can't breathe. Rachel answers, and the script went away. And so I went off my original script that I always do. I'm like, hi, Rachel. This is Taylar Fetzner, birth date 6/27. And by the way, I give that on the front end because I know you're gonna ask me for
anyway.
it. Like you're gonna ask me for it.
Prepared.
I'm coming.
My favorite is when people call and they're, what you need that for?
Literally, you know what I need it for. I don't know why you're asking me. Tell me one time you've gone to the doctor.
What do you mean? My name's Ann Smith. You telling me you got another Ann Smith around here?
Yes, 100%, Ann. I do. Anyway, so I call. I'm like, hey, Rachel, this is Taylar Fetzner, birth date 6/27. I need to get an appointment with Dr. Snicklefritz or anyone under his umbrella because what? Because I'm sick. Like, that's literally all. I was like, because I don't peel real good. Because I think I fruit up. Because I'm hacking up a lung. Because Rachel, I think I'm dying. And because my mom, hey Rachel, because I think my mom and my best friend told me that I have pneumonia. So I really need to see Dr. Snicklefritz.
Before it comes meningitis.
Before I get meningitis, I have to go to the hospital. So do you care to get me in at the soonest available appointment? Like right now, because I'm sick. Because it's literally, because what are you supposed to say? I'm sick. Like,
right.
What do you say?
Right. I'm just not feeling well.
And it's like, she knows that. She could tell by my voice.
Yeah.
She talks to me every time.
100%.
She talks to me every 3 months. And most of the time, it's actually not even Rachel. It's Danielle. And Danielle's like, hey, Taylar.
Yeah.
Like, and so
you have a great personality to do a reception job.
Oh,
you know
my
that?
God. I would love it.
You would be like, oh, my gosh, Marianne, what's going on? How them kiddos doing?
How's John doing? I haven't seen him come in with you in a while. Did you ditch him? Like, seriously, I would love to be
I mean, I do answer the phone at work. And if you work with me and you're listening to this, you're not. If it's like, we don't get a lot of patients calling, but we get the select few. And when they do call, they're asking stupid questions. How do I get there? And I'm like,
Google it.
I'm like, do you have Google Maps? Do you have Apple Maps?
Do you have a phone?
I'm like, it's right there, like the front door. Like you can't miss it.
Also, it literally says it on the signs.
I am so short on the phone too, because I'm like, what are you calling for?
You're horrible.
I mean, it's literally there's one door you could come in. You have a big sign that says surgery. It's not going to be that one,
right?
Or you could come in the other door,
right?
Period.
Or
the emergency room.
Or by the way, just pull your car under the bay and walk in there to the desk and be like, hey. How do I get to the lab?
And they're going to be like, you're at the right place.
Exactly.
You're right here.
Let me go
right
park
here.
my car because I got here 30 minutes early.
We have valet. You don't even need it.
Look at that.
Valet parking.
Look at that. I mean, that's what I'm saying. And by the way, get to your doctor's appointment. If you don't know where you're going, get there 30 minutes early.
I know. Oh, that's my biggest
That's coming from someone, me, who is chronically late. Look, okay. I won't lie.
I know I don't need paperwork because I know I did it on my email.
I do it online.
But I still come early.
I don't even, if it's like a place I'm unfamiliar with, I will get there at least 15 minutes early. Mm-hmm. If it's my primary care physician that I go to every 3 months, I'm skirting in right on time.
Right.
But by the way,
like
I know I'm
OB
sitting
that
out
I
there.
see once a year.
I go there at
early.
least 20 minutes early. Because there's always like a ton of forms, even though I filled them out
Even though you sit in the back for a year.
Literally 2.5 years. And then they come back and they're assholes to you. Never forget. Never forget. I mean, they're lucky that we're still patients there, quite honestly.
I mean, truthfully.
I mean, they truly don't understand. And they're really lucky we haven't even put them on blast yet like we could.
That is true.
Anyways, I wish that I could get my doctor's nurse to give me back all of the voicemails I've left her over the years because they have progressively gotten funnier. And because I'm like, she's listening to these all day long. Like these are annoying that she's getting. I'm sure they're just like so fucking stupid. So every time I call, her name's Michaela. Every time I call Michaela, I'm like, Michaela, hey queen, it's Taylar, Taylar, Fetzner, Fetzner, birthday, even though she literally knows, because who the fuck else is calling her like this?
Right.
And I'm like, anyways, babe, I'm just calling you because the pharmacy, of course, acts like they've never ever given me this prescription ever a day in their life. So if you have like 15 seconds today that you could throw that in and send it over to them, that would be fantastic. They're like, we won't call you back. And I'm like, and if you just want to talk, you can give me a call back. And like, I always leave her my number. And
I don't like that. Call me back.
I swear. And I love her. Every time I come in, she's always like, your voicemails, they just crack me up, girl.
I think I actually had her the other day.
Yeah.
Well, at my...
she's like a really sweet little Southern girl.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I did have her. Yeah. Like doing my vitals and stuff.
I like her a lot. Yeah. I really like her a lot. She was cute. Yeah, she's a sweetheart. Every time I walk in, where'd you get those jeans from, girl? Mm-hmm. I'm like, girly pop, I've told you the last 3 times because these are the only jeans I wear out. They are the Ollie somethings from Princess Polly. And da-da-da-da-da.
Yeah. Being up front at any office would just be so fun.
Yeah, it would just be hilarious.
You would know all the tea. Oh, because also they're not just handing you their insurance card and their ID. They're giving you the life story.
Exactly. I mean, me.
You're hearing the phone calls in the waiting room. Like
you're hearing the arguments.
It's
tea. It is tea. Like every time I go in there and they're on the phone, I'm so excited to be waiting for them to get off the phone because normally Danielle would get off the phone and be like, oh, it's just been one of those days, and I'm like, all the idiots are calling you. Like literally, I say the craziest.
Or they turn to their coworker and they're like,
literally, I'm like, girls, you got to fill me in.
Yeah,
what's
going
the
on?
tea? What's the tea, girl?
I can't tell you how many times I'm like nosing around because where I work, there's multiple departments right there. Like, I mean, at least 8 different departments. So I'm running around with different people that I don't even work with.
Right,
they're just like in neighboring departments. And I'm constantly walking up on people whispering, and half the time I like have said a couple words. Right. I'm like, "What's going on, guys?
Fill me in.
What's up?"
Meanwhile, you're like terrified that the dog's gonna arrest you, and like you're trying to get the details.
I'll never forget. Poor little dog.
Poor little dog. Okay, guys. Well, we're gonna get to it because me and Morgan have a very, very important thing that we need to tend to, which is getting a Dr. Pepper with cream downstairs. So hit them with it.
If you're driving, throw that shit on cruise control.
If you got a glass, pour that shit up.
And let's get creepy.
Okay, Morgie, what do you have for us today?
So today I am covering the moon-eyed people.
Ooh, This has been a long time request.
Yeah, this was, I mean, I've seen the request multiple times, but this was most recently submitted on our Reddit page. And our listener attached a really cool YouTube video about this topic. So if you're wanting a little bit more than what I'm going to give you, or you wanted like a picture walkthrough, then you could go check that out. Excuse me, I had a burp from our Dr. Pepper Cream Soda.
Yeah, sorta.
And you can check that out on our Reddit thread, which is Creeps and Crimes, and it's under the tag of recommendations.
Okay.
So it's one of the first ones. According to Cherokee lore, long before the land was occupied by the Cherokee Nation in Appalachia, there was a tribe of moon-eyed people. They lived deep in the woods of what's present day North Carolina, Tennessee, and Georgia. These moon-eyed people had blue eyes and such pale white skin that it resulted in a sensitivity to light that they actually were nocturnal.
Ooh.
So they were Edward Collins.
Oh my God.
My skin.
Here we go back again with the twilight.
Sleeping through the day, emerging only during the moonlight. And unlike other beings who appear in indigenous legends, they were neither spirits nor monsters or cryptids, but humans, like the Cherokee themselves. They suspect that they were actually Europeans who came to North America in the 12th century.
They just had blue eyes.
Is a hot fucking take. Okay,
Yeah.
this is the most common like reasoning behind the moon-eyed people. So nothing is factual here.
And also, isn't this from the mouth?
Yes, and I will say
Yes.
that. So this, I will get into like direct quotes from a Cherokee chief in like 1780 or like
Right.
1800s. I just don't want to, you know.
Please don't ruffle feathers.
Yes. Okay, so this is recounted from Cherokee chief Oconostota, who told John Seaverville, John Seaver, of Tennessee governor of 1782.
Severe?
Sevierville.
I was like, Seaverville? Who the fuck is
Who
Seaver?
lives? I don't know why I had that in my head.
I was racking my brain. I was like,
John
I should
Sevier
know.
from Sevierville.
Seaver. Yeah.
And you know who I always bug about that? Aaron's mother says Surreyville.
Oh.
I don't know why.
No, yeah.
And
We're
like,
not to put that to
and we
rest.
all are like, sorry, we just look at her. And then she's like, Seaverville. And that's why it's in my head. I know how to say Sevierville.
You do.
I do.
You
I
did.
swear. That's so embarrassing.
That's so funny.
Okay. So John Sevier, Tennessee's governor of 1782.
Everything in this entire side of East Tennessee is named after him. Every street.
Everything.
Everything.
So the Cherokee chief Oconostota told him a story that was told to him by his ancestors that, quote, white men had long ago crossed the Great Water, the Atlantic Ocean, and landed first near the mouth of the Alabama River near Mobile.
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 In the Gulf of America.
In the Gulf, through the Gulf of America. Near Mobile. Now, this legend of white men coming before Native Americans runs parallel to this legend of a Welsh prince named Maddox ab Awan Gwynedd.
Okay.
Gwynedd? No fucking
Never
idea,
heard of
guys.
him.
No idea. Maddox was the son of Awan Gwynedd. And Awan was the 12th century king of Gwynedd, which is out in Wales, and is considered one of the greatest Welsh rulers of the Middle Ages. His reign was filled with battles and wars with other Welsh princes and even King Henry II of England. Oh. Like, he was just fucking, he was ready and to like, when I say he was brutal, like, he just was causing bloodbaths. Like, he was like a vicious, like ferocious, but like, that was hot then, you know?
Yeah. Back then, that would have turned a bitch on.
Back then, when a king started a war, people were like, oh
God,
baby, you
he's
know?
so sexy. He's fighting for us.
Awan had at least 13 children from his 2 wives and then several more children that were born out of wedlock.
Of course.
You know, but they were legally acknowledged under Welsh tradition. 2 of these children, out of the 2 wives, were Maddox and his brother Rhirid, I think. Rhirid? Rhirid. No idea again.
No, I don't know.
But after the death of their father, this huge family war breaks out. Because, I mean, there's like 20 kids, right?
Yeah.
And so this huge family war breaks out over who is next in line. Like, I'm talking an absolute bloodbath. Unsure of the details of like why this took place. Because usually...
Because he didn't have a detailed will.
Yeah,
and that we've always said
and
that.
he fucked everyone from that.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, he did. Because I'm assuming that the next in line was probably like an illegitimate,
Right.
and so then the royal blood was like nope, and but then the illegitimate,
our mother was
and I say that in quotations,
recognized. Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
So anyway, I don't know what happened. I didn't really look too far into it, but it was a fucking bloodbath. And Maddock and Rarid, the brothers, were like, we're out of here.
Gotta go.
So they escape and they flee Wales in 1170.
1170. Columbus could never.
7-Eleven.
Yeah.
Slurpees.
Slurps. That's where it came from.
1170 and started sailing west. Allegedly, they landed in ice. I mean, seriously, guys, allegedly. Like, there is actually, and I do want to preference this. I say it later on, but like, there is no proof that has been considered evidence. There is proof, but like, it hasn't been considered evidence from historians that this took place.
They genuinely thought that they landed in India when Columbus got here. So,
Right.
like, take everything with a grain. They had no fucking idea where they were. They didn't even know that this was here.
Right. So allegedly they land in North America and they establish an entire settlement. I don't know why I can't talk. Settlement. Now, sailing that far in 1170 sounds insane, but there's more to this myth here, and it's that Maddock was this like mythical prince. Like, and I don't know the details on that, but like he had magic or like witchcraft then, I guess, or some sort of power that allowed him to sail so effortlessly from Europe across the Atlantic Ocean and landing in Alabama.
Right. And like, my question is, Maddock,
Maddock,
how did you
Maddock, I don't
miss
know.
the entire state of Florida?
Right.
How did you make it through that one little
How did
canal?
you get down so far and you're like, no islands? You're like,
yeah, literally. Like, you didn't see
the Gulf of
you didn't see
America.
Cuba. You didn't see Florida. You went straight through the Cuban and then Florida, like little, that passage if you're on a cruise ship.
And
like,
then
good
popped
luck.
in Alabama and then ended up all the way into the mountain range.
Like, how did you get to Mobile?
Unless rivers were different.
They definitely were.
And they just kept sailing the river until they were like mountain range. That seems like safety, security kind of thing. Like we can use that to our advantage, which is kind of, I don't know what
they had to pass through a lot of freaking mountains.
This was 1177 11 Slurpee year.
1177.
Right? So we don't really know what it looked like. So anyway, he was believed to be like this mythical prince, which I think will aid into like why they were blue-eyed and like had like these like mythical elements to the description of moon-eyed people.
Right.
Legend states that Maddock even was able to return back home and then bring more people back across the Atlantic with him.
Dude, not even the Lost Colony of Roanoke could pull that off.
They're saying like at first, like it was just him and his brother and like a couple sailmen
right.
that were with him. But like he was so like mythical. I think he was like just like spiritually connected. That's kind of how I want to say it.
Like he just understood.
And like
he was just at one.
Yeah. Or like he made a deal with someone. I don't fucking know.
With the devil.
Made a deal with the devil. Who
yeah.
knows? Yeah, at the crossroads down in Mississippi.
Yeah, down in
and then continued up into, anyway. And although Maddock and Rarid, they really disappeared from the historical record because like I said, there's no evidence to even prove that these two Welsh men made their way to America. Their story was kept alive from the 12th century to now through Welsh stories and songs. We obviously know this to have no historical evidence and obviously aren't taught about any early settlements, especially 300 or so years before Columbus, which who
Why
even knows
not?
if that's even fucking true. Like we don't even know, guys. You see what we're saying here, right?
Like, did you guys learn about this at school? Because we for sure didn't.
Because we for sure didn't. But if there's one group of people that I'll believe when it comes to history, I'm sorry, but it's the Cherokee.
I'm listening to whatever the hell Cherokee Nation's
I'm listening to the Cherokee Chief.
And I'm writing it down and I'm logging it in my brain.
And I'm logging it.
Right.
Also, an American botanist and educator named Benjamin Burton wrote about his conversation with the Cherokee and the legend of the Moon-Eyed People. And in 1797, he wrote, quote, "The Cherokee tell us that when they first arrived in the country which they inhabit, they found it possessed by certain moon-eyed people who could not see in the daytime. He also wrote about legends that the Cherokee viewed them as wretched, which kind of makes me think that maybe they were given, like they did have like some bad spiritual energy to them.
Right.
Or like evilness to them.
Right.
And that the Cherokee had expelled them from the land by using the sensitivity of sunlight against them and attacking them during the day. So this is, again, from the words of Benjamin Burton that was written in a book.
And also just want to note here, because I literally cannot stop thinking it, like, if you were, native, if you're indigenous, to see someone with blue eyes would be crazy. And also what we do know is that
like the rarity of blue eyes.
Right, like blue eyes are
what
rare.
did it mean then?
And then also like they talk about the native indigenous tribes that had dark skin, dark hair, but had blue eyes, and they were like, oh, well, that came from the lost colony of Roanoke, like when they took them in or whatever. And it also, think about it too, like these people are wretched. They're probably for real mountain people, you know?
Yeah.
Like, because there's not really, you can't really grow much in the mountains. It's only good for like going and getting like healing herbs, like
right. And especially if they're, okay, I'm sorry, but if I saw a breed of humans that would only function during nighttime,
right?
Like animals.
Look at us, right? We have dark eyes, dark hair. Imagine if we had never seen a blonde hair, blue eyed person,
and they're only running around at night.
Yeah, I'd be like, these people
and their skin has never seen sunlight.
They're pale.
So they're pale.
Oh my God.
I'd be like,
oh my, what the hell are those
what
things?
The S-dub?
Yeah.
Did I just see a ghost?
Right. Yeah. It would be really jarring.
Yeah. The Cherokee chief Akinostoda also said that there's proof with this legend beyond stories that were passed down generationally. Apparently, there are some mysterious mounds in the area, and through word of mouth, he had always heard that they were built by Welshmen. And then, when Europeans did begin settling into North America, Welsh people who were a part of that migration over here to the New World, Welsh people were shocked to notice a lot of similarities between their people and the indigenous tribes. Characteristics like blue eyes, pale skin, as well as some of the indigenous languages that were very similar to Welsh.
Ooh.
In 1608, a group of settlers even found that Welsh was so similar to the Monacans tribe language that they had a Welsh-speaking member of their party named Peter Wine who acted as an interpreter between the two groups. Like, he was able to fully understand what they were saying because he spoke Welsh.
Right.
And no one else in his group did. So that's interesting.
That is really, really interesting. I would like to see like a comparison of the two.
Yeah. Also, these Welshmen found stone forts that were eerily similar to stone forts back home that had been back home for hundreds and hundreds of years. Like forts that their ancestors built. Now they're come to this new world. They just crossed, the Great Sea. And they come there and they're like, holy hell, did we do a circle?
What the hell?
Like, what's that fort? That was in my backyard. They don't speak like that. I don't know why we do that.
Yeah, they do.
Like, what the hell is that doing in over here? Right. So it was very like weird. And now I'm not saying that by any means. Am I saying that the indigenous tribe is Welsh people?
No.
That is not what I'm saying.
No, do not.
Okay?
Do not.
Not at all. Do not fucking put those words in my mouth.
Don't even. Just understand that we're working with what we're given.
What I'm saying is that people believe the moon-eyed people were here prior to the indigenous people, and that they probably took a lot of customs, cultures, and then also when you look at the stones and the walls and the forts and everything, that people are saying that is proof that the moon-eyed people were here.
I mean, well, what the hell, dude? If you think about what, back Pangea, okay? We're going way back, right? The Appalachian Mountains, they're so old, right? They're like they're the oldest mountain range. They're 10 times older than the Rockies. They were at one point on this earth connected to a mountain range in Scotland.
Yeah, somewhere over there.
Somewhere over there. Yeah.
Wales.
Yeah.
Welsh, yeah.
So what if that was like...
Could be.
Well,
it really could be. And then that's how the people got here. They just rode the land. But that's crazy. Like, does the land... I know the land
there when
Pangea was a thing? I don't know.
When did humans exist?
No, after Pangea.
Yeah, but still that doesn't mean that, whatever created life.
After Pangea, but before the ice bridge melted.
Right. Because we also have to remember the ice bridge. Yeah.
Which is crazy.
We can't even go there right now.
Yeah, no, that's crazy.
No, we still don't understand what cars looked like and when cars were created. So I think we're going to sit right here really pretty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So a lot of historians are like, maybe I think it's just a coincidence, but some, think differently. Some conspiracy theorists believe that these people, this moon-eyed, like, group of human race are some sort of lost, forgotten breed of humans, or even aliens, or like a crypto human. Like, I mean, there is theories out the wazoo. The moon-eyed people were short, blue-eyed, like we said, and pale. But some even evidence and legends suggest that they were also flat-faced.
What?
Yes. Across the Appalachian, there are strange sites that some believe were made by the Moon-Eyed people. For instance, the first one I'm going to talk about is the ruins of a once standing wall that still stands today in Fort Mountain, Georgia.
Okay.
So this kind of goes back to where the settlers that came over and they were like, that wall looks familiar to my, oh, that's crazy. In Fort Mountain, Georgia, there is these stone walls that stand on top of like several mountain peaks. And several of these walls, sometimes they are circular in design. They existed throughout North Georgia, including Stone Mountain, Alex Mountain, and Lads Mountain.
Yeah, well, the most popular one is Stone Mountain because it's an atrocity. But we're not going to get into that today.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the three of those mountaintops are like the most prominent of these stone walls that were there. And then there was a lot of others, but many were actually demolished for like road fill and like other shit. Because we just erase history. The structure varies in height from 3 to 10 feet, though averages around 4.5 feet wide at its narrowest point to 16 feet at its widest point. Like these walls are huge.
Those are huge.
The wall is believed to have built around 400 AD.
I can't even comprehend that.
And to have had a ceremonial function since it lacked some certain characteristics that would be necessary for like a defensive purpose, like if it was like a war, like a fort, you know?
Right.
So first defensive purpose that it lacks is that the wall is so low in spots that people inside the wall would be completely exposed to danger from people outside the wall. Like it wouldn't stop anyone from coming in.
But if they're little tiny Moon-Eyed people.
Yeah. Secondly, there was no source of water within the wall to be the use of a well. And then third, the wall fails to take advantage of like the curves in the mountain slope, and in some instances it actually like will change course and like go like a completely makes no sense way that people behind the wall would just be more susceptible to hostile actions from a person that's on the other side of the wall.
Right.
So like all in all, they're like there's no way they use this for some sort of battleground. Because of this, it's doubtful that the wall was ever a true fort, even though it's called Fort Mountain.
Yeah.
But it almost looks identical to European burial walls. And because historians have estimated that the wall was built between 400 and 500 AD, well, this like is way before that arrival year of those Welsh princesses, which was 1170, 711 Slurpee.
Yeah, 711.
I mean, by hundreds of years did that come before. That to me kind of makes me think like, okay, the Moon-Eyed people, the Welsh princes, they might have been in Alabama.
Right.
But I don't think they made their way there. I think that this is like an entire forgotten human breed.
Right, like having to do with the ice wall type shit.
Yes.
Yeah.
According to Atlas Obscura, a man named Emmanuel Stewart, who was a Fort Mountain State Park official, says, quote, "There's clear evidence that there were native people here before the Cherokee." And then, of course, he's like referring to the wall in the fort. But who this tribe was in the case of Fort Mountain and whether they were the same as the, quote, Moon-Eyed people mentioned by the early settlers and their contacts is unclear. If the dwellings for homes could be found, then this would provide a huge breakthrough on their identity. But nothing like that has ever been found, just this wall, except for one other artifact. And that artifact is said to be from the Moon-Eyed people. It is a statue of two people with flat faces. This statue is currently at the Cherokee County Historical Museum, and it is unlike anything you have ever seen recovered archaeologically from the Southeast.
I'm looking it up right
Here,
now.
I have a picture.
Oh,
already.
I see it.
Look.
Yeah, I've seen this before.
Yeah.
Oh, they just look so cute.
Yeah, they do.
They look like sunny angels.
But that's like, you would never find that. What's Southeastern? Like, what's that doing there? You know?
It's a bunch of rednecks looking at this shit.
So this statue, it'll be somewhere. Maybe not be on our Instagram. Just look it up.
Yeah. Well, you know what? We'll figure out a way. I might put it on our story.
We'll do a story.
Yeah, we'll do a story until we figure out what we're doing with our Instagram.
There are two. So if you're not looking at the picture, there are two like creature kind of things. They're about 3 feet tall that are carved from a block of soapstone. And it was carved by the method of pecking, which is basically like hitting a larger rock into this soapstone rock.
Right.
And the two creatures in the statue are conjoined at the face and like body, which was a little interesting, I thought, why they would be conjoined.
Well, because maybe they're like, we don't have the time to fucking peck these bitches apart.
Right. But like, why do they need two?
Maybe,
You know?
Maybe there was actually three.
They had like they have really flat faces and almost kind of like sunken in at the cheeks just a little bit.
Yeah.
Really long, like what's that, oval but rectangular? What's that shape called?
of the nose.
Yeah, like a really elongated.
It looks like Squidward's nose.
Yeah, they look like Squidward. No,
Yeah.
literally, they look like
literally
Squidward.
they look like Squidward.
I think this,
But their chins are actually pretty defined and like, you know.
I think the statue actually is just a replica of Squidward. I think Squidward was
based off of the Moonite people.
The statue.
Yeah, or maybe an octopus.
Yeah, or that. you know,
who knows?
I forgot about those.
Squid, you know.
So they have no arms. They have round eyes that are just like a little like too big for their foreheads. And they were found while clearing land in Murphy, North Carolina in the early 1840s.
Whoa, yeah.
Like it was just a farmer.
That's pretty recent.
Apparently, pretty recent. But it didn't go on display until 2015 because it spent decades, I mean centuries, being tossed around and bought through like private hand sellers.
Oh, I'm sure.
Like people were having them,
like
millionaires were having them in their home, and like it was like a big ordeal. But it finally got back to like its local museum's hands in 2015, and it's on display at the Cherokee County Historical Museum. Many people believe this to be an effigy of Moon-Eyed People, as it matches exactly to the legend that was passed down from generation to generation. Now, of course, there are competing theories with this. Some claim that the effigy merely represents two local rivers, or a human man and a human woman. Others suggest that they might be descendants of the Welsh adventurers, which I just don't think so. Anyway.
I don't think so either.
In 1882, an article in the Native American newspaper Cherokee Phoenix detailed the discovery of 3 burial grounds of extremely small statured people. The longest skeleton was a mere 19 inches long near the Tennessee town of Sparta.
Sparta? What you guys got going on?
So this was like huge news in
big
82.
deal.
1882. And apparently some of these individuals appeared to have adult teeth that were worn down with age. So like while they were the size of like, someone could be like, that's a toddler.
Right.
Their teeth were formed. And I'm going to give you another example of one of those. So this is in Sparta, Tennessee. And several of these bodies were in stone coffins. And then they were buried with items that they believed to have been like shells. They said they may have been made from shells. There's no record of what happened to these remains. At all. But the article is often mentioned by those who believe the Moon-Eyed People were real. So like this little script from the Cherokee Phoenix, this piece of this article is constantly referenced when people talk about the Moon-Eyed People. Now, some intertwine the legend of the Moon-Eyed People with the local legend of the Little People of Appalachia. Some say they are just descendants, the Little People are. Some say they are one and the same, and some say that they are 2 entirely different species. The Little People live in the woods and are often thought to be hairy-faced mountain dwarfs. Some are no higher than your knee. Others are even smaller than that. They'll build houses in the rock structures under the trees, along streams, and sometimes in the trees. They'll hide from anyone coming into the forest. And in the legends of Little People of Appalachia are very similar to fairies, gnomes, goblins, leprechauns. Like that's
like Irish.
It does, yeah. You know, fae, pixie, whatever you want to call them. Changelings, all that shit. So that's like
all of our favorite stuff on the planet.
All of our favorites. But each indigenous tribe had their own name for them. So to the Iroquois, they are called the Jogaho, and to the Comanche, they are called Nunapi or Nunupi, and to the Cherokee, they are called Yunwi Sundi. So they all had little names for the Little People of Appalachia. But there is little Evelyn. There's little Evelyns. There's little evidence that they do exist. But in the 1830s in Coshocton, Ohio, there was a graveyard that was unearthed, which contained the skeletal remains to a small human race. The graves in the cemetery were just 3 feet long, just like the ones in Sparta. And then there was an author named Mary Joyce who wrote a book called Cherokee Little People Were Real. And in her book, she states, well, I have proof of their existence. Her proof is that during the construction of the campus of Western Carolina University, which is near Sylva, North Carolina, in the 1930s, they came across some interesting things. Apparently, they found tiny tunnels that ran from the mountains into the town, like tiny tunnels, when they were putting a sewer line on campus. Also in these tunnels were bones and burial mounds. And then allegedly, these remains I'm about to tell you about, they sit on a science teacher's like office currently to this day, which I find hard to believe. That's why I'm saying allegedly.
Right.
But basically, they found remains of a skull. And the skull, although toddler size, so like tiny, tiny, tiny head, had a full set of teeth, including molars and wisdom teeth. and it was a tiny, like
so that's not a baby.
1-year-old head.
Right.
The little people are classified into 3 groups: the dogwood people, the laurel people, and the rock people. The dogwood people are kind and always doing good things. The laurel people are the ones that are like playing tricks or mischievous. And then the rock people are mean, should be avoided.
Mean.
They suck.
Meaner than hell.
They're jerks. The story of the little people is something that great grandmas in the Appalachian region tell their grandkids. And with this story comes a couple of rules. The first rule of thumb: leave a gift as payment to enter the forest. Preferably sprinkle a bit of tobacco. They do be liking that on the ground. But if you don't have that, then a little bit of sugar or something.
When I was the president of the hiking club, we would sprinkle tobacco.
Would you really? That's funny.
If we had like a caramel candy like your grandma keeps in her purse, like a butterscotch, we'd unwrap it and put it down in the
That's so
soil.
funny.
Yeah.
I didn't know
It's
that.
just an offering to the forest as you walk in. It's a thank you. And also a cash donation to the visitor centers would be really nice too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That would be too.
Yeah.
If you hear the sound of drums, it is not safe to follow
Hell
it.
no.
Apparently, they use the sound as a way to lure people before they'll throw a spell over you and cause you to get lost and lose your way home. If you find something in the forest, whether that be a trinket, a candy shell, or a knife, or a Gatorade bottle, you must ask if you can have it. If you don't ask, they might throw stones at you on your way home. They are also one of the reasons that people in Appalachia choose to close their curtains after the sun goes down, why they hear chatter outside, and that no one leaves the house after dark. And there's houses and families in the mountain range that live by by this. Like, they're like, after dark, you get your ass in, lock the doors, close the curtains, don't look outside. Now, whether they have anything to do with the Moon-Eyed people or not, I don't know, but they are similar in size. So it is interesting, and it is the same region.
Right.
Which I think is interesting. And then I also think just like word of mouth between the Moon-Eyed people, and then you hear like, I don't know how I want to say this, but anytime you hear of fairies and like goblins and like little like mischievous, people that are still human-like but not, you hear about Irish tradition. So I think just over time the two have probably intermixed.
Well, yeah, you do have to remember too that Appalachia was heavily filled with Irish people.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they were looked down upon, and they were, went up into the mountains and stuff like me.
That's why the moonshine's so
me
good.
and I swear to God, Indigenous, Irish, Scottish, and then you have like Melungeon.
That is like interesting to know, like that and that makes sense to me, that Irish tradition of the little people in the woods would mix with something that has been around since 400 AD of the Moon-Eyed people in the woods, and how those stories could potentially intertwine, which is why I wanted to talk about both of them together.
Yeah, and that's why there's a lot of like Appalachian lore that crosses over with Irish and like Scottish
lore. It is so interesting.
Yeah.
Some still believe that these little people and even the Moon-Eyed people still reside in the tunnel system, in caves where Adam and Eve in Kentucky, just kidding, in the Appalachian region, that so many people believe are real. They do think they live there and that they come out at night. Personally, I think that I don't know. I don't necessarily want to say that they're not real, like current day, but I think that they are their own race. I think it's something more so like the Lemurians that lived on this side of the country.
Yeah.
As evidence obviously predates the Welsh settling princes. You know what I mean?
Right.
So like, I don't want to say that they're European. I just think that they're their own little race. And also the theory to why the Welsh people might be so small. This is my own theory. This is not like a thing. But because so many people thought Prince Madoc was this mythical thing, I kind of thought maybe it was like a curse or like some sort of deal that Prince Madoc made when he granted like this wish to go and find new land and start his own settlement, because his family had turned against each other, and this was kind of like we can do this for you, we can guide you to the new world, but in return, like, you're not going to be powerful, you're not going to be strong, your colony is not going to be like almighty, like, so that you could replicate what your family had done over in that original area.
But we know
that's
it's
my
older
own theory,
than
though.
that too,
Yeah, but then we know it's older than that. There's evidence that predates
Yeah, this
all
just
that.
probably was like an ancient civilization of people that we just don't really have much record on. I mean,
that lived underground.
what the hell? We literally are still over here scratching our heads being like, what the hell happened down at Machu Picchu?
Right.
You know?
I know, really, though.
Yeah.
But who knows? Could be aliens too. Probably aliens. And that's all I got. That is the Moon-Eyed and little people of Appalachia.
When in doubt, blame it on the aliens.
That's I'm always, they're my comfort zone.
Yeah,
that's
that's just where we leave it. So we remind you every single time that this is a conspiracy podcast. Even though we love history, it's not. It's also a lot of pseudo history. That
Yes, and like I said, a lot of this has not been confirmed by historians, or
but if it's coming from the mouth of a Cherokee chief, I
That
am
to me
listening.
is
I'm listening.
but I hate that the words that we hear from a Cherokee chief come from
John Sevier.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then the author, another white man.
Right.
Like, and so I don't really like that. Like, I
Right.
wish it was, but
I wish it was different. But I guess, like, you know, beside all the word of mouth lore of it all, like, what are you talking about? A 16-foot wall from the 400 AD?
like doing what?
Who
Why?
the fuck was building that?
Right. And for what?
Right.
For why?
Why? I mean,
And why does it match things
all
over
I
in
can
Europe?
think of is that it's like the snake mound, and all the different mounds and stuff that we have that are ancient that we have no idea.
And I think to me, it just kind of adds to all aliens. I'm just saying that, you know, you see pyramids, like you see these structures all across the globe that distantly are so far away from each other, but date around the same time period. And you're like, how could they be creating the same thing at the same time? And to me, it just adds it. It's
There's
another
never been an original
structure.
thought once.
Here's I mean, we learned one thing from TikTok is that
no one's ever had an original thought.
So maybe people are just always on the same wavelength. I don't know.
Because it does make sense. Like, common sense would be like, okay, if you want to honor your sky daddy, your sky gods,
let's get as high up
we
as
would
we
want to
can.
go as high as we could. So we want to go, but also mountains were great for, like I said, like hunting, for, you know, defense, for herbs and healing medicinal things.
Right.
They would bury special people because you want to get them as high up as you could.
Right.
And so
it was an honor.
Right. And it was an honor. So even without having pyramids throughout Appalachia, we had the mountains, and they would take them to the top of the mountains.
Right.
So
and maybe there's pyramids under the mountains. Who knows? You never know nowadays.
Swear to God.
But I did want to say how you were touching on the blue eyes earlier. That a lot of like the Venetians, blonde hair, blue eyes. But then I'm like, fucking Hitler, and you can't even talk about it without being uncomfortable.
And then
you
it's
know,
like we can't even go there because it just feels awkward. But yeah, you know, I would like to know the evolution because, you know, humans in the earliest form, they never had blue eyes. They all had brown eyes. So when did that, you know, I wonder when blue eyes started, not that we can, you know, go back and ask them, but it's like, I wonder when that trait.
But like, how do you even do that appropriately without offending?
Well, yeah, because then it gets to a point of like, oh, okay, yeah, because that motherfucker. But yeah, it's just really interesting because it's like clearly an evolutionary or an evolution trait.
Yeah, and like what was like the physical like reasoning behind it? Like
like not saying like anyone's better than anybody. I'm not not saying that at all. But it's an interesting thing to think about because early humans and human species, pretty much from what we know,
dark features,
right? Completely, because it protects you from the sun. Right.
So why did this race come out? And they're like, we're only coming out in the moonlight.
Right. And
we're the moon-eyed
it's not
people.
like the first ever humans, there's no way that the first ever humans could have been white.
Right.
Because human life had to be created around the equator and you have to have darker skin to be exposed to that much sun.
Right.
So, and that much heat. So, well, that's going to piss a bunch of people off, but that's literally like,
well,
that's
true.
the truth.
Unless, of course, you believe in Adam and Eve in the mountain range of Kentucky.
And unless you're wondering about the Garden of Eden over there, but like, yeah. So yeah. Wow, that makes me want to do Ancestry Beyond, like genetic. I would love to know the genetic traits. That's something that's always interested me though, because I'll never forget learning about, like, you know, when we were in school and they did the box and you did a recessive and those traits and stuff. Yeah. Me and my sisters and my mom, dark eyes, dark hair. My youngest sister has the lightest features of us all. She's got blonde hair. Well, not completely blonde, but like a very, very, very light colored hair compared to ours. She's got green eyes. And then my dad literally is blue eyes, super pale skin, which you guys can tell in the winter. I get that. By the way, my dad's got the most beautiful freaking blue eyes that you've ever seen. They're like piercing blue. And then bleach blonde hair his entire life. And it's so funny to see how my mom's genes just stomped all over that shit, you know?
Yeah, my mom has green eyes, and then Marshall has blue eyes. I think. I don't know why I want to say that, but I think that's correct. The rest of us are brown.
Does he have like gray blue? Because I feel like they're like deeper, right? Because they're not like
bright blue.
Yeah, they're kind of like Logan's.
Yeah,
Logan has gray blue eyes, which I'm crossing my fingers at at least
bitch,
one
I'm
of our
so
babies.
Sorry, your babies are brown haired, brown eyed.
I literally would kill.
You're gonna copy and paste.
But you have to think though, Logan's parents are both blonde hair, blue eyes.
I know. I just think your genetics are going to stomp because your mom's genetics stomped.
I know, my mom would be stomped. But you know what? That Fetzner gene.
You're right.
That Fetzner gene's crazy.
Yeah.
But Logan's the only one in his family that has the dark features from his mom's dad. His mom's dad is the only, so his grandpa is the only one that had dark skin, dark eyes, dark hair. And then Logan comes out, and I'm like,
Aaron's
if
mom
you didn't look just like your daddy, we would be asking questions.
Aaron's mom growing up, and I mean, even till like till gray hair started, was blonde, blue-eyed, bright blue-eyed.
Aaron's hair is dark.
And Aaron's hair is dark, and then his brother was blonde, bleach blonde as a baby. And I think he's got blue eyes, green eyes.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Marley was bleach blonde, white blonde hair.
My hair was really light when I was little, when I was a baby.
She was white.
But I didn't have white
up
like
until
that.
probably like middle school, and then it started
darkening.
That
happens a lot with people. Like my sister-in-law, I first met her when we were in preschool. And right. That's crazy. So I knew this girl. She's now my freaking sister-in-law in preschool. And she had bleach blonde hair. Like our entire childhood. And then probably around third grade, it just started it got dark. It went from being bleach blonde. And then now it's like about the same color as my hair.
Should we say, fuck the podcast and become geneticists?
I'm not going back to school.
Well, can we just do it?
Can we do it without going to school? Like, can we just do it like sleuthing? Like, because I could Google that shit.
Can we have a genetic podcast? But then are we like, do we become like crazy? Like,
no, because we never would.
I'm just so afraid of genetics because it just
it's just got a bad, people got a bad taste in their mouth. But I would never weaponize genetics. Yeah. Because who the fuck would do that?
Yeah, no, who would?
That's
do that?
Kooky. Like, that's
I just
crazy.
want to know. I just want to answer.
Yeah, I just want to know what the deal is. I just want to know what the tea is because it's weird. It's interesting. It's really cool. But you know what? I told Logan, I said, watch our kids come out because all I want is dark hair, blue-eyed babies. Like that. That's why I literally married Logan. Like dark hair, dark skin, blue eyes. Are you fucking joking?
Got a shot here.
I got a shot.
I'm gonna have all brown-eyed babies.
I know. Yeah,
I have a lighter brown. I could maybe get a green, but I'm all brown.
You can maybe get a green because you do have some green in your eyes. Yeah, I would love at least one pair of blue eyes. But then they're gonna be red hair.
Eye color. Like, what's that about? Like in general.
See, that's Morgan, that is exactly where we started. That's where I want to talk about. Like, I would like to know
what's up with that?
When and why they think lighter eyes started becoming a thing. We know why lighter skin is because it was like the further away you went from the equator. Also. Yeah, you just lost some melanin. Right. And then also like why some people have like super hairy backs and shit. Like that's just
and also like
evolution.
If you had piercing green eyes in the 1500s, were you a witch?
Yeah.
Yeah,
because that's rare. People are like, that's not supposed to happen. Green eyes.
I feel like we've probably offended a lot of people.
Well, I'm not. If you're offended by this, then you need to check in with yourself because.
And I just want everyone to know. I don't hope we mean no offense.
No, you're crazy if you're offended by us talking about evolution of eye color. Okay, like you're crazy. So,
shit.
And I mean that with my whole heart.
Yeah,
don't be crazy. Yeah, don't be crazy.
Don't be like that.
Don't be crazy today. I don't know why we're scared of them. They're the coolest. Like
I know. Yeah, you guys are cool.
Yeah,
But there's just a rare few that'll come. They'll try it one episode. They'll listen to this. They'll leave us a terrible review.
Yeah, they would. But you know what? Fuck them.
Like the one that was like, you guys are talking about politics. We said 3 things.
We literally
that we had to address. And if we don't address, you guys are like, you guys are tone deaf to the world. And then it's like too much politics. And then oh my god, are they even noticing? Like we can't win.
Oh wait. We need to thank everyone for the gifts that they sent us.
Oh, yeah, we do.
Seth and Sherry and their family, they sent us a book from Michelle, the marriage counselor, right? Relationship, Michelle Bias, I want to say. But she's based out of Oklahoma and she puts on those like storytelling events over there. So cool. And Seth actually shared the
link to it
story with us
and Patreon.
But I think it was on Patreon, but he did send it to us personally as well. And then we just got it. I can't wait to open it. Yeah. And then they also sent us witch calendars.
Yeah, witch calendars.
And then we had another listener with a brand that we need to shout out. We'll put it on our Instagram in a story. Because we haven't taken the picture of the gifts that we got that actually has an Etsy shop and sent us some stuff from
so cool.
Their Etsy
it was
shop.
Literally an astrology.
By the way, your mug is phenomenal.
Calendar.
I can't get over the mug that you sent me. It's a great mug.
Cute little tote bag. It was very sweet.
We got an astrology calendar, a regular calendar. We had 2 witch calendars from Seth and Sherry and fam, and then
everyone. Okay. Guys, we got 4 calendars.
We got
for
4
Christmas
calendars
this year.
Yeah.
Are you trying to tell us to get our shit together?
What are you guys trying to tell us?
Are you trying to tell us that we need to be on a schedule?
What are you
Because
trying
we
to tell
try.
us? We're trying. And then we also, Kate sent us a Christmas gift and sent us a gift card buying us a few rounds of drinks.
Love Kate.
From a local restaurant,
Sweetie.
a little local bar. So we wanted to thank you guys for that. We got it from our P.O. box. Yes, Morgan did find her key, so we are allowed back in now. Yeah,
We're back, baby.
And if you guys are like, what's your P.O. box because you took it off your Instagram and I can't seem to find it anywhere on your website, yeah, I can't even remember the address to it. So
I think 11.5.
it's like 11.5 okay. Nope.
I think that's actually accurate.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm not gonna guess around.
Yeah, no, I'm not gonna guess around, but it's something. We'll put it somewhere.
I'll put it on our. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add it to our website on the contact us page where it has like our management email and everything. I'm gonna put our PO box underneath there as well, and then that's where you guys can find it from here on out because we got rid of all those story highlights.
And Instagram's actually getting rid of them in general anyway. So
they are? Well, good because I hate them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to miss them because I like to look back at mine sometimes.
I do too, like to look back at my stories and stuff, but I hated it on Creeps and Crimes. Like on my personal page, I keep them up because I like them. But on the Creeps and Crimes one, I was over that shit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay,
all right,
guys.
what do you got for us?
Nothing that you guys are going to be excited about.
We haven't even started yours.
I know. Okay, guys. I'm bringing the mood all the way down.
Cool.
Like.
Figures.
Bad.
Dun, dun, dun.
Really bad.
Fun.
Yeah, it's so bad that I had to crack open a bottle of wine. Today I'm going to be covering the Dardeen family murder. I actually mentioned this case on episode 123 when I covered the case of Crystal Searles, and I'm going to give you a blurb on that case throughout this one to give you a little refresher. It was a really hard one for us to do, but if you guys want to and you haven't listened to episode 123 yet and you want to kind of get the crossover, I didn't go into any detail at all. This is what I said. This case is connected to the Dardeen family murder, but I'm going to cover this soon. 2 years later, here I am fulfilling my promise.
I just thought we were on like 125. I'm like, oh, that was 2 weeks ago, and I don't remember it. I was like, I'm losing it.
No,
we're in 225.
It was February 2023 that I covered this case. Yeah. So here we are coming back, but the trigger warnings that I need to give you are, first off, this is a gruesome case with mutilation involved and also the death of a child and a newborn child. If that is something that you don't have the space to hear today, I totally understand, and I think you should wait because this one, it did a number on me. So let me get everybody collectively take a drink of whatever it is that you're drinking, your coffee, your water,
your Dr. Pepper
your
cream
wine,
soda.
your Dr. Pepper cream soda, whatever.
Oh, what a mood killer you are.
Mm-hmm. But I am thankful that you gave them something fun. That's why the second she walked in, I was like, please tell me what you're covering today.
Oh, I thought you were referring to my text. Fun.
No,
okay.
no.
I was like, don't blame this on me.
No, I'm glad that we had a good time.
Got crossed.
I'm glad that we had a good time
at the
with
beginning.
The Moon Eye people and being able to, have little things that we could talk about within it and how our lack of understanding of genetics as well, because I'm bringing it down. All right. So for this case, we are in Ina, Illinois in the late 1980s. And just for some context, Ina is an incredibly small town. The town is roughly 2.4 square miles. And as of 2020, the population was just 1,641.
Oh, she's
but
tiny.
In 1980, it was only 460.
Oh, wow.
And if you're like, okay, well, maybe it grew a lot by 1990. Yeah, I mean, it grew, but only by 29 people.
Oh, wow.
Making the population a whopping 489.
Wow.
Right. Ina sits on Illinois Route 37, which doubles as the town or villages. It's often called a village, Main Street, and is about 11 miles south of Mount Vermont, Illinois. It is about an hour and a half southeast of St. Louis, Missouri, and is about 2 hours and 40 or so minutes west of Louisville, Kentucky. So it's in southern Illinois. Ina also sits beside Rend Lake, which is a wide reservoir that supplies over 15 million gallons of water a day to 60 communities in southern Illinois where it is located, which is what actually brought the Dardeen family to this small town back in 1986. 29-year-old Russell Keith and his 30-year-old wife, Ruby Elaine Dardeen, who actually both of them go by their middle names, so I'm going to be referring to them as Keith and Elaine, moved themselves and their 2-year-old son, Peter, to the area after Keith completed his training for his new job, which was a treatment plant operator at the Rend Lake Water, oh my God, it's Conservancy.
Conservatory?
No, it's Conservancy. I think it's Conservancy. District treatment plant / facility in the town of Benton, which is just 11 miles south of Ina. And Elaine worked at an office supply store in Mount Vernon, which, like I said earlier, is roughly 11 miles north of Ina, meaning they picked Ina because it was the halfway point between their jobs.
Do we have a Mount Vernon here? Mount Vernon, Tennessee?
I think so.
Yeah, that sounds familiar.
She would drive 11 miles north to go to work, and he would drive 11 miles south to go to work. 10 minutes.
That's nice.
That's nice, right. The two had found a piece of land that they rented from a farming couple named Lloyd and Joanne Settle, and the Dardeens purchased a mobile home to live on the property, which they were really excited about because it sat just off Route 37, which is the town's main road that connected them to both Benton and Mount Vernon. It was just across the highway from the Illinois Central Railroad tracks and also I think it's Highway 57, or Interstate or Highway 57, which was a big deal when it came through the area. Keith and Elaine joined a Baptist church, a little tiny one in Ina, where they were a part of this music ensemble for the church, with Keith being lead vocalist. And Elaine playing the piano.
Oh, what a slay couple.
So just like your...
Yeah, that's my new goal.
Yeah, I think we said that on Patreon. Morgan's going to be a pianist.
This time next year, I'll be also in my ensemble playing the piano.
Right. You know what we're going to do is she's going to be so good is that she's going to rewrite us a theme song.
Yeah.
For the podcast.
Yeah, I can do that.
And I'd love to play it for you.
I haven't started my lessons yet, but they're coming.
It's just been in the
Once
talks.
I get a little bit extra cash.
Right. Once we're feeling a little, after we pay these taxes, she's going to be...
I'm going to be head first.
Yeah, you just
piano.
better watch out come April, guys.
All right, just watch it.
So, whereas she played the piano, which really helped them build strong relationships and get involved in their local community in Ina very quickly after moving there. The Dardeens were very much loved by everyone that got to know them. They were super, super sweet, and everyone loved this like new growing family as an addition to their little small town and community, especially when they would get to talking to the Dardeens about their son, Peter, who was their entire freaking world. From the time that Peter was born, Keith and Elaine began working very hard to be able to give him the best life possible, putting as much money as they could monthly in a college fund that they had created from Peter the day they found out she was pregnant. So for them, it was like, okay, we're going to pay the rent for the land. We're going to pay utilities. We're going to buy the groceries and the necessities that we need for this month, have the gas money put aside. And then every single cent that was left was put into the college fund for Peter.
That's awesome.
Right.
Especially then.
Yeah, it was a big deal, right? And if they didn't have as much as they wanted left over to put into the fund that month, Keith would go buy sodas from the grocery store and take them to the water plant with him and sell them for 50 cents each. So smart.
Yeah.
Until he like hit the mark where he wanted to be. And that's what he would do to help add to the college fund if they were a little short that month. Then in 1987, Elaine found out that she was pregnant with their second child, and they were so elated. The couple decided that if it was a baby boy, they were going to name him Ian, and if it was a baby girl, they were going to name her Casey. They were so excited to watch Peter become a big brother and have a best friend for life. However, the news of the second baby put a lot into perspective for the couple. With this addition, they were very quickly outgrowing their mobile home, and to be honest, though they loved their little community that they had created in Ina through church and so on and work, they really regretted moving there because, according to Keith's mother, Joanne, the couple felt that the area had become way too violent for them to feel safe.
Oh, and it's such a small town.
Right. By the way, Ina sits in Jefferson County, Illinois. So that's really important because it's more so about the county crime, but also Ina itself like had a lot of crime in it, which is crazy. Literally 486 people in
like
it,
it'd
right?
be your neighbor robbing you, and I'd be like, dude, give me my shit back. You
like
know,
I'll literally walk back over to your house.
Right.
Like, you fucking joking?
you can't steal from me because I'm going to see you with
But
it.
it wasn't stealing, Morgan. It was murders.
Oh.
You see, there had been a total of 15 murders in the area in just a 2-year period. That started with a Mount Vernon teenager named Thomas Odell, who stabbed his parents and 3 siblings one by one as they returned home one night in 1985 during an alleged LSD-fueled rage.
Holy crap. That's terrible.
Yep. And then in May of 1987, when a 10-year-old girl was raped and murdered in the area, like horrific, it was horrible, in Ina, it just confirmed to Keith that he needed to get his family the hell out of there. It was getting too bad.
That's too many.
Right. Because if there was one thing you need to know about Keith, it's that, yes, he was a good, kind, God-fearing man. However, one thing he did not fuck around about was protecting his family. Period. And an example that is constantly given by the Dardeen family is one night this young woman who looked to be like early 20s, late teens, came and knocked on the Dardeen's door after dark and asked to use their phone because of some, maybe she was lost, she was running late, her car broke down, whatever the reason was. Typically, especially with this being the 80s, this would be no big deal for anyone to allow someone. I mean, today you come and knock on my door, you ask to borrow my phone, what's wrong?
Right.
Talk to me through the Ring camera because I'm not coming to the door. Right. But back then, like in any other case, I'd be like, oh yeah, they said yeah, and then they invited her in for dinner. She slept at the house that night. They took her to church with them the next morning, and then she went home.
Because that's how it went.
That's just how it was back then. Keith refused to even open the door for the woman and basically told her to scram or he was going to get his gun. And I tell you all of this just to show you how on edge the couple was about the crime in the area and the fear that they were experiencing. Being pretty much all alone in this super small town on this big piece of land right across the way from the main highway, the railway, like people were jumping trains back then. So, in any other story I'd be telling you, like I said, like they left their doors unlocked. No one ever locked their doors. Everyone trusted each other. Whatever. They would let strangers come in their home. But this was not the case at all for the Dardeens. They were militant about locking their doors and their windows every single day, even when they were home, leaving them locked at all times. And this was not a rule that they had implemented recently either. This was something that Keith and Elaine had talked about before they even moved to Ina because they had learned about the Odell murders. But it got more and more strict, and they got more and more, specifically Keith, paranoid with every single crime that happened in the area, even if it wasn't a homicide or like something atrocious, even if it was just like a break-in. Like anytime he read it in the newspaper, it was making him sick, and it was adding to it even more until it just essentially became too much. So either way, they had planned on moving back to Keith's hometown of Mount Carmel, Illinois, which is roughly 77 miles northeast of Ina, before their second child was born. The first step in moving was putting their mobile home up for sale and starting their job search by having Keith's family that still lived there ask around town to see, are there any job openings or whatever. But honest to God, Keith actually told his mom and his dad, I don't care if I don't even have a job, we're moving before this baby gets here. But in the meantime, the couple was picking up as many shifts as they could, working as hard as they could to generate as much income as possible to help them save up for their move while also still, getting some money into that college fund. Which is why it was so alarming when Keith did not show up for his night shift that was scheduled from the night of Tuesday, November 17th to Wednesday, November 18th, 1987 at the water treatment plant without at least calling in. His supervisors called the Dardeen landline several times throughout the night and even the following day, receiving no answer, prompting the supervisor to call Keith's parents in Mount Carmel and ask if they had heard from their son or their 7-month pregnant daughter-in-law, Elaine, and they hadn't. Immediately upon hearing from Keith's supervisor, his father, Don Dardeen, called the Jefferson County Sheriff's Office to do a welfare check, agreeing to drive the hour and 15 minutes to Ina and meet the deputies at his son's home with a spare key so that way they could go in and search for the couple if no one answered the door. Because essentially Don was like, them doors are going to be locked.
Right.
100% those doors
He's
are gonna be locked.
paranoid. The doors are locked.
The
He
doors
locks
are
them all
locked.
the
So, you know, if we need to get in there, you're going to need a key, and that means you're going to need me. I'm the only person with a spare key. So he drives down there. The deputy meets Dawn at the Dardeens mobile home at 6:30 p.m. in Ina, where they found that Keith's car was missing. Either way, they're like, all right, let's just go knock on the door. They go to the front door. They're continuously knocking. They try the knob. It's locked, of course, just like Dawn said it would be. And then they were like, all right, before we just bust in, because obviously like there's a method to doing a welfare check, they went around to the back door, which was actually attached to, so like led into the couple's bedroom, and it had a window on it where the front door didn't. When the deputy used his flashlight to look through the window and into the couple's bedroom, he could see what looked to be people asleep in the bed, lying under the blankets. He knocked loudly again, but none of these people that looked to be in the bed seemed to move. The deputy then decided to just try the doorknob to see if the door was unlocked. And, you know, Dawn's like, there's literally
no shot.
No way. But unlike the front door, surprisingly, it was open. He entered the couple's bedroom and slowly approached the bed. Gently and carefully, he lifted the neatly tucked blankets, trigger warning, where he found the bodies of 30-year-old Elaine, 3-year-old Peter, and a newborn baby girl.
Oh my God.
Elaine had been gagged and bound with duct tape and possibly had been tied to a chair at some point in the home. Peter was also gagged and bound with duct tape, both brutally beaten to death with what looked to be a baseball bat that was found inside the home and had been a birthday gift for Peter earlier that year. The majority of the injuries were focused on Elaine and Peter's faces and heads, with both of their skulls being severely fractured upon their discoveries. And trigger warning, because I'm going to speak about the newborn's condition, and majority would probably like to skip through this. So either during the attack on Elaine or while she was tied to the chair and forced to watch the murder of her son Peter, her body went into spontaneous labor, causing her body, either dead or alive, to deliver their daughter, who we're going to call Casey because that's the name that they intended on for a little girl. After which, just like Elaine and Peter, the killer used the same baseball bat to beat the infant to death, meaning that all three died of blunt force trauma to the head.
Oh my God.
The killer then, one at a time, neatly placed them into the bed and tucked them in under the covers, posing them to look as if they were sleeping.
And to me, that's kind of like a remorseful act.
We'll talk about that in a little bit more detail. The deputy, along with every single other officer that rushed to the scene and investigated, were all in shock upon seeing this and traumatized. The home was covered in blood, pools of it, splatters from floor to ceiling, and it kind of looked as if the killer had tried to clean it up, like put things back where they were and tried to clean up the blood, but quickly gave up because of the sheer volume of blood that was inside of this home. But the majority of the blood had been dried or was clotted, leading investigators to believe that the murders took place at some point on the night of November 17th, so just 24 hours prior to them finding their bodies. From what they could tell, Elaine had not been raped or sexually assaulted. There were absolutely no signs of a forced entry into the home. No windows, no doors had any damage to them. And there were no valuables missing or stolen from the home. And they had like video cameras and tapes, even money and her purse and her checkbook all sitting on the counter in the kitchen.
Wow.
But there was no sign of Keith or his 1981 red Plymouth anywhere inside or outside of the home, leading investigators to theorize that Keith had murdered his entire family, jumped in his car, and fled, which no one that knew him could possibly believe to be true. But honestly, it was all that they had. A bolo was immediately sent out for the car, and roadblocks were stationed around the entire town. Meanwhile, officers were dispatched to search Keith's family members' homes for him in Mount Carmel, while interrogating each and every single one of his family members and friends about his whereabouts, while the manhunt for him carried on in Ina.
Well, also interrogating them and also just then informing them the death of loved ones.
Right, yeah. His sister said that they came in and they're like, your sister-in-law's dead, your nephew and your niece are dead, and your brother did this. Where is he? And they were like, what?
Yeah, I couldn't even process that.
Like, what are you even saying to me?
Right.
It wasn't until the next day, Thursday, November 19th, that Keith's car was found parked outside of a police station in Benton, Illinois, which is where he worked, 11 miles south of their home. Investigators searched the car and found nothing but blood covering the entire inside of it. However, just a few hours after the discovery of the car, at around 6:30 p.m., so this is 24 hours exactly after they found Elaine, Peter, and baby Casey, a group of hunters were passing through a wheat field that was just a mile away from the Dardeen home on the other side of the highway, the interstate, and the railroad, when they discovered the brutally murdered body of a man that they would quickly learn was Keith Dardeen.
Holy crap. I was not expecting that.
Jefferson County deputies rushed to the scene along with the coroner, where they were horrified at the absolutely horrific condition of his remains. Keith had 3 gunshot wounds to his face, one on the front of his skull, like on the front of his face, one on the right side of his face, and one in his left cheek. And his genitals had been cut off of his body.
Oh my God.
And I don't know how true this is, and it has never once been confirmed by official sources, but allegedly his genitals had been placed in his mouth.
Oh my God.
So clearly, this is a very personal, targeted, revengeful, and humiliating type of brutal attack on the Dardeen family. Even after the autopsies, investigators could not conclude who had been killed first, but it was determined that they were all killed. The entire family had been killed within an hour of each other. But they could tell, based on the blood found inside of the family car, that Keith had either been killed or castrated inside of the car and then moved into the wheat field.
Holy shit, dude.
The news of these attacks and the conditions of the victims spread like wildfire throughout Ina and then the entire surrounding areas, which included 4 states: Missouri, Indiana, Kentucky, and of course the rest of Illinois. People feared for their lives in a way that they had never before because of the insane and demented killer that was on the loose after this horrific and
family killer at that.
Right, like crazy. Like this is crazy violent. So local police agencies were assisted by the Illinois State Police to investigate, with a total of 30 detectives working full-time on the case, exploring every single lead that came in and interviewing hundreds of people. Investigators turned all of their attention towards the crime and the manhunt for the killer or killers, carefully searching the car, the home, and the crime scenes to make sure that they did not miss a single piece of evidence that could potentially help them find out who did this. But they struggled to even find a motive. Like I said, they very quickly ruled out robbery and sex as motives. And though this seemed very personal, investigators could not find anyone in the area that had any obvious grievances with the couple. There were no signs that there had been any affairs, addictions to drugs, alcohol, gambling, etc. There was no debt or drama going on within the couple's lives. However, they did find traces of marijuana inside of the mobile home, but there was no evidence that the Dardeens had ever sold, purchased, or smoked marijuana, especially when they got the autopsies back and found that there were 0 traces of drugs or even alcohol in any of their systems. Therefore, they believe that this must have belonged to the killer or killers, the marijuana that they found. But the things that really left all of them stuck were how the killer A, got into the home in the first place, knowing damn well that they were militant about keeping their doors and windows locked, and 2, took control over both Keith and Elaine, got them separated, bound and gagged them, and then killed all 4 of these family members within under an hour without any sense of urgency. Like, took the time to do all these posings, tuck them into bed, and even try to clean up, leading investigators to wonder if Keith may have been murdered first and was possibly already outside of the home in his car when he was attacked. Now, bear with me because we are about to talk this out, literally like talk this out in detail, mainly because I haven't found any sources that walk through this theory in a clear or concise way, or well, at the very least. So here we go. And if you guys saw my like stressed ask for help on Instagram, this is what I was talking about. So first thing that you need to know before we break this down is when the coroner theorizes that the family had been killed. According to the Southern Illinoisan article that was released on Tuesday, November 24th, 1987, which was exactly 1 week after the discoveries of Elaine, Peter, and baby Casey, Fred Smith, who was the lead investigator on the case, said that the Dardeen family was last seen by witnesses at approximately 5 p.m. on Tuesday, November 17th. However, it was also reported that the coroner theorized that the victims found in the home, so Elaine, Peter, and baby Casey, had been killed at least 12 hours prior to being discovered at 6:30 p.m. on Wednesday, November 18th, and that Keith had been killed from 24 to 36 hours prior to being discovered by the hunters at approximately 6:30 p.m. on Thursday, November 19th. Also, don't forget that it was determined that all 4 victims had been murdered within an hour of each other. So with all this information, the window of their murders would have been from when they were last seen, which was 5 p.m. on Tuesday, November 17th, to 6:30 a.m. on Wednesday, November 18th, because that was 12 hours prior to them being discovered. However, we do know from that same interview with Fred Smith in the Southern Illinoisan article that Keith's shift was actually set to begin at 11 p.m. on Tuesday, November 17th. For which, according to his colleagues, he always, without fail, would show up 20 minutes early for his shift, every single shift that he ever worked at this plant. So with all of this information, plus the fact that we know the drive from their house to his work was 10 minutes exactly, we can shorten that window of opportunity for someone to attack them down to somewhere between 5 p.m. and 10:30 p.m. on Tuesday, November 17th. In this theory, investigators consider the possibility that Keith was stopped on the road when he was leaving for his overnight shift, which he would have left around 10:30 p.m. So maybe there was someone like blocking the road that he had to like get out of the car and like confront them or like go check on them or something, at which point he was attacked, put into his car, driven to that wheat field, murdered and mutilated.
They got his address.
Well, assuming that it's targeted, like they would have set up that roadblock, the killer would have set up that roadblock intentionally. And then the killer would have gone, after dumping Keith's body, assuming that he was murdered first, gone back to the mobile home and either used Keith's keys to enter the home or acted as if Keith had been in an accident to trick Elaine into opening the door, which is when they tied Elaine and Peter up and murdered them under the cover of night, because you have to remember this sat on the main road. Their house sat on the literal main road of the town, so this had to be at night or else people would have heard and seen something, right? So use the cover of night to murder them. And the fact that they were in such a desolate area with no close neighbors nearby would explain how and why the killer or killers had zero sense of urgency when attempting to clean up the scene and pose the victims. And with all of this being a very good theory of the order of events, possible order of events from that night, it also confirms the thought that this was not at all a murder at random. This was a planned out and targeted crime. But why? This is what investigators, and really anyone for that matter, cannot understand. In fact, they began wondering if this was somehow a case of mistaken identity and meant to kill someone, 4 houses down, and got it confused, because it literally made no sense. There was no reason why someone would want to kill them. But yet it's so personal.
Yeah, it was very personal.
Right.
And I feel like the way you were describing them, like especially with him being paranoid, those like last couple months leading up to their deaths was probably very isolated. They probably kept to themselves.
Yep.
you know, like, so they weren't out making enemies.
No, it's not like they were out there like fighting with people. However, one thing that really stood out to the Dardeen's family members and police was about how paranoid, like you were just saying, Keith had been in the weeks and months leading up to their murders. Like I told you, they were putting their house up for sale, looking for jobs so they could leave town, saying, you know what, even if I don't have a job, we're getting the fuck out of here. Being incredibly militant about their safety, which is kind of rare for 1987. Keith talked about his worries with all of his family and all of his friends that he spoke on the phone with back home. And when they would ask him, you know, why are you so paranoid? He would just reference the recent crimes in the area, which, yes, would cause anyone to worry about their safety and their family's safety, especially, you know, knowing that I have a 3-year-old son, I have a baby on the way, and my wife, and da-da-da-da. But what if there was something more? What if he had been personally threatened by someone for whatever reason and just never told anyone about it?
And used that as like a mask for
the paranoia and the fear that he was having. Investigators tried everything. They looked through every single drawer, closet, pocket and jackets, hidey holes, purses, wallets, notebooks, notepads, sticky notepads, etc. in the Dardeen home. But there was absolutely nothing that they could find that would indicate the family was in any sort of trouble. They even brought in 2 FBI profilers to spend time in Ina, read through the entire case file, interview several people, and examine all of the surviving evidence that they had. And they were able to make suggestions, but they just kept coming to a wall, leading them to essentially say that this crime, quote, defied all of their typical analytic methods and that it was so rare for so many possibilities to all hold sway. Right. Meaning not even FBI profilers could make sense of this or even create a profile.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Because there was no profile.
Because there's not one. It doesn't make sense. And with that, the case went cold. And it is still cold to this day.
What?
Yes.
Nothing.
I'm
not
nothing.
even an ounce of like fingerprints. I mean, this is a terrible
DNA
crime scene.
Nothing. I'm not even halfway through the notes. If that gives you any inkling.
Why, bitch? Why'd you just end it like that? I thought we were done. I'm like, oh my.
Because that's typically where people stop covering this case because that's it.
Okay.
That's truly the rest.
Carry on. I'm intrigued.
And honest to God, the rest of this, you know, is public knowledge and it's been investigated. But pretty much all theories and what's the word I'm looking for? Speculation.
Yeah.
So before we go into theories and speculation, I do want to still talk about what came of the investigation. I mean, you have 30 detectives assigned to this case. You have all the local agencies, you have the state agencies, and then you have the fucking FBI. So you're telling me they didn't come up with anything?
Right. It's a lot of resources.
Exactly. That's a lot of resources.
A lot of brain power too.
So I do want to discuss some of the other avenues that investigators went down before the case actually went cold. That obviously didn't pan out. And this really centers around the neighbors that spoke with police about their thoughts about who could have potentially done this and like kind of the vibe of the Dardeen family and who was coming in and out of their home frequently, who could have potentially done this. But keeping in mind the fact that in typical circumstances, these attacks seemed extremely personal. Those personal feelings come from a few main points. So let's walk through those before we get into all of this. Number 1, Keith was separated from his family. He was castrated and he was left in a field a mile away from his family. This shows that this killer wanted to humiliate him along with the location. And it sends a message of sorts. And the distance from his family also feels like it's a message within itself, especially with what we know about Keith's safety precautions and his protectiveness and his almost paranoia about the safety of his family. Almost seems like the message was, good luck at protecting your family from here. Or it shows that maybe he was meeting someone in this area and lured there by someone that he trusted. Number 2, we know that Elaine was tied to a chair and tortured either physically and or mentally prior to being beaten to death. And this is very, very personal. And it shows that the attacker wanted her to suffer for a period of time prior to her death, just to turn around and tuck her into the bed along with the bodies of her 2 children, which some people say, just like you did, like it kind of shows remorse because, their faces are covered and whatever.
Right.
But I don't think that's the case. I almost think it was another message from the attacker to the family or to police. So to the family, it's like sleep tight or like stay hidden. You know what I mean? Like you're separated or they're safe. Don't worry about it. He's a mile away. He's, you know, they're safe from them. Whereas like if we're saying that it's pointed towards police, it almost feels like, you know, peel back the layers. Like we want to lure you in to find this horrific crime that I've committed. I want you to have to come in and untuck them from the bed.
Yeah, I also see it could be like they're safe from him.
Right, exactly. Which is so weird.
But I do still, part of me still does see like the remorse, but like not so much remorse, but kind of like I'm sorry, you were just like the byproduct of what I had to do, or like the.
But I just feel
like
like
my side quest to like get. I don't know.
You've by far past remorse when you have forced a 7-month pregnant woman into spontaneous labor and then beaten her newborn baby to death. You know what I mean? So like maybe that's just because I don't have the mind of a killer. We can, you know, think like
and I do.
No, I didn't mean to say that. But like, you know, we can think like that, and naturally that's what we would always go to. But to me, I think that's exactly why the profilers were like, we don't even know what to fucking do with this, because this is more like Black Dahlia, like posing.
Yeah. And oftentimes
like surrealism.
You see people like clean them up.
Right. And they didn't clean them up. They didn't wipe the blood off them. They just moved them to the bed and tucked their bodies in individually. The third point is that there are differences in the ways that Elaine, Peter, and baby Casey were attacked versus Keith. Keith was shot. Elaine, Peter, and baby Casey, they were tied up, tortured, and then beaten to death with a baseball bat that was found within the home. So like if you have a gun, why not just use it for all of your victims? Unless there's 2 killers, because these are 2 different types of killings. But let's say there's just one. Why did they feel the need to be that up close and personal with the victims that were inside of the home as they died, yet be okay with just shooting Keith? Because, you know, that's a step back compared to like beating someone to death, watching the life go out of them, versus standing back however many feet and shooting Keith.
Right. Minus the castration.
To me, assuming that Keith was castrated prior to his death inside of the car as a form of torture, just like how Elaine was tied up and likely forced to watch her children die. Maybe he was, you know, he's in the car, he's castrated there, and then he's forced to walk out into the field where he was shot, because it's not like after being castrated, he would have the ability to really fight back. So like, why use the gun? Why not just be that up close and personal?
Right.
Like you were with the others, the children and the women. Now, another important thing that I should know is that they have never released what seat Keith was sitting in when he was attacked in his car. Oh. And it is a very big piece of this case that they have vowed to keep close to chest. They've never released it. No one has ever let it leak. Along with what the victims were wearing at the time of their deaths, because I feel like just like the seat that he was sitting in also plays a very important role and is a very important piece of information that would help us better understand the timeline. Because if they were in pajamas, then we can assume that it had to be after 9 p.m., right? But again, just like the seat that he was sitting in, they keep it close to chest.
That makes me think that it wasn't the driver's seat.
Right.
You know?
It makes me feel like it was like the back seat. So going back to that conversation with the neighbors that investigators had, who spoke at length to try and figure out why there were no signs of forced entry, one thing that isn't heavily reported on is the fact that allegedly the Dardeens were breeding and selling chocolate labs as another form of income for Peter's college fund. So people would come in and out of their house to view, pick out, purchase, and pick up the puppies, meaning at any given time that a litter had been birthed, there were several randos coming in and out of the home. Particularly, it was just like hunters from the area that were getting hunting dogs. However, there was this one man that the closest neighbors to the Dardeens saw coming in and out a lot more frequently than just the puppy buyers, which, mind you, they lived on a bunch of farmland. So I use neighbor very loosely. So you need to be thinking like a county distance level of a neighbor versus a city distance. Like I could literally touch my neighbor's house right now. But if we were at Morgan's house in town. I mean, Morgan's house at home. Like,
my townhouse.
We ain't touching your neighbor's house. Right. You know what I mean? Or if I'm out at Logan's family's property, I could scream and no one could hear me. Aaron's property too. Maybe his cousins also live there, but you know, you get the point.
They would hear.
Right.
Those two,
they're listening.
They're looking out the windows at each other. They're checking.
They know what's going on.
They're your neighbors.
Exactly. They are CCTV level neighbors. So keep that in mind as I'm saying neighbors, because I'm using that term very loosely. Either way, one day this neighbor was on their way over to the Dardeens to either drop something off, pick something up, whatever, and saw this man that they saw frequently pulling out as they were pulling up. And they get out of the car, Elaine's out there, and so they just start talking to her, and they're like, "Oh my God, who is that? I've been seeing a lot of him recently. Right. Is that family?"
So, nosy neighbor.
Yeah, like, is that family member? Do y'all have someone come to
neighbors
visit?
Know who I am.
Exactly.
They're like, that car's here way too much.
They're like, that's our business partner. Yeah. Exactly. So like, is that family? Is that a friend? And also because like I said, they had only been there for not even really a full year at that point. So it's like, oh, you guys making friends and da-da-da-da. So, is that family? Is that a friend of yours? To which Elaine seemed really surprised that they would ask her about this man. She then sort of quickly or sharply said, "Oh, that's just one of Keith's friends," and then quickly changed the subject. "But what brings you over here today?" You know what I mean? Like, just
which I could see a normal response being like, "Oh my God, you're so fucking nosy. It's none of your business."
Right. Like, and
just a friend.
And why does that bother you?
Right.
This is someone that works with him who came to pick up the docket, whatever, before he went to his shift. Anyways, so she changes the subject. And at the time, this stood out to the neighbor as odd. Like, they left that conversation thinking about it, playing it back, because they're probably thinking like, did I overstep by asking that or whatever, But after the Dardeens murders, it stood out to the neighbor even more so, which is why they even told police about this encounter in the first place. And I'm sure that the police followed up on this person and possibly could have been the person that they actually arrested in connection of the crime back like a few months after it happened. Really, all that I could find about this arrest that was made is that the person was very quickly released and cleared after being questioned extensively. And other than that, I do know that they did heavily interrogate this person and another person before clearing both of them. And this other person was one of Keith's coworkers that he just always like had drama with. It's like, "You're always being so fucking hard on me." Just like workplace drama, not "I'm gonna go castrate you and kill your entire family" type drama, Right. From what I could tell, investigators even cleared these people as persons of interest. So like, they were no longer even considered as possibilities in this case. So again, all leads ran cold very, very quickly in this case. Throughout the 90s, Joanne Dardeen, Keith's mother, did everything that she could to keep this case in the public eye. She regularly called the detectives that the case was passed off to year after year and offered any and every single lead that she would come across or learn about over the years. She even gathered over 3,000 signatures from the people in her area on a petition to ask the producers of the Oprah Winfrey Show to do a segment on the case to get better attention on it, which they did acknowledge her. They called her back and they were like, "Unfortunately, this is way too brutal for daytime television."
That's crazy.
You get a car. Like, you can't take 2 seconds to like do something serious. It's a talk show. Like, it had the Oprah Winfrey Show had the largest televised audience, like I think in history.
Right. And that could have seriously helped out the case.
Exactly. But finally in 1998, Joanne Dardeen, Keith's mom, got the case on America's Most Wanted, but unfortunately it did not generate any new leads. In 1999,
that's hard to believe. America's Most Wanted
always helps,
hundreds,
which is something, just even something little, In 1999, investigators actually reached out to detectives working the railroad killer case, which I covered on episode 205, the survival story of Holly K. Dunn.
Okay.
Do you remember this? Her and her boyfriend were on the railroad tracks.
Yeah.
And were murdered. Well, the boyfriend was murdered with a pickaxe
Like outside of college, right?
Yes, exactly. That one. His sister turned him in, and he was in Mexico, and he just would jump trains and kill people.
Yes.
Okay, so his name was Rafael Resendez Ramirez. Because of his MO of hopping freight trains and murdering victims at complete random with like pickaxes or anything that he could find in those areas near the railroad tracks, this was super relevant to the case because of the Dardeens' home and rented land sitting right beside both Route 37 and the Illinois Central Railroad tracks, which is now the Union Pacific Railway. However, they were never able to officially connect him to the crime, and it also didn't make sense as to how he would know where Keith lived if we're going off the theory that Keith was stopped in his car or went to go meet someone in his car. But either way, it just wouldn't take too long though before they got another lead, because the railway killer wasn't really panning out. It just,
well, and didn't he take something from the houses, or he would do something in the house?
he would take something from the victims. He would always keep like a trophy
and give him to his sister,
right? Yeah, and give it to his mom. Jewelry,
yeah,
he would give it to his mom and his sisters, right? Exactly. And nothing was stolen from the home. All her jewelry was still there and all accounted for. So they were kind of like upset by this because that seemed like one of the best leads in this. It wouldn't take too long for them to get another and a better lead, and actually it was a confession.
What?
This one being the reason that I even spoke about the Dardeen family almost 2 years ago when I covered the Crystal Searles case on episode 123. And that is because of Tommy Lynn Sells admitting to murdering the Dardeen family. So let's do a quick refresher on Tommy Lynn Sells and the Crystal Searles case. Again, it was 2 years ago, but this is a case I'll truly never forget. And I know the second that I get into it, it's gonna come back for all of you guys. So on December 30th, 1999, 10-year-old Crystal Searles and her 7-year-old little sister, Mark, had slept over at Crystal's best friend's house, 13-year-old Katie Harris, in Del Rio, Texas. The girls stayed up late and eventually fell asleep after a massive sister tiff where Crystal made her little sister sleep in the spare room across the hall from Katie's room, where Katie and Crystal slept in Katie's bunk beds, with Crystal being on the top bunk and Katie being on the bottom. At approximately 3:50 a.m. and now the early morning hours of December 31st, 1999, Crystal was awoken by the sound of Katie's muffled screams. She carefully and quietly peeked over the top bunk rails and saw Katie in a struggle with what looked to be a tall man as he sexually assaulted her and stabbed her 16 times. Too scared to scream and draw attention to herself, Crystal tried to hide by laying flat and frozen on the top bunk. When the man turned to leave, Crystal peeked her head over the rails quietly as she planned her next move to help her best friend, realizing that the man had sliced Katie's neck and she was bleeding out on the floor of her room, making direct eye contact with Crystal, almost communicating with her to be quiet and be still.
I remember that. Oh, that's terrible. God, I hate that.
As she's doing this, she looks up at the man as he's walking out of the door when he whips around and makes direct eye contact with Crystal. He grabs her down from the top bunk and pulls her to the floor where he slit her throat, leading her to bleed to death beside Katie. She laid in the floor, unable to speak or scream as blood poured down her body from her throat, and her best friend took her final breath in her arms. Thinking that the man had to have killed everyone else in the home, she ran out of the house and ran a quarter-mile down the road to a neighbor's house, knocking on the door at 5 a.m. It was the house of retired military officer Herb Betts, who brought her inside the home and called 911 as she wrote on a notepad what happened. By some miracle, Crystal had survived, but Katie did not. They also quickly learned that Katie's parents, siblings, and Mark, Crystal's little sister, who was also in the home, forced to sleep in the spare bedroom across the hall, were all unharmed. Crystal was able to give police a good enough description of her attacker by writing, because, mind you, she cannot speak, and they created an incredible composite sketch that they released to the public. Police brought Crystal in a photo lineup to her hospital bed as she was recovering from her emergency surgery, and she immediately identified her attacker and Katie's killer being Tommy Lynn Sells. By 5:30 a.m. on either January 1st, 2000 or the early morning hours of January 2nd, 2000, less than 48 hours after Crystal's attack. Police knocked on Sells' front door where he lived with his wife and 4 children. And when he opened the door, all he said was, quote, "I'm glad I finally got caught. I was tired of doing this. You're lucky that you got here when you did. I already sold my car and was waiting for the banks to open this morning so I could get my money and leave town." He then showed them where he had hidden his 11-inch butcher knife that he had used and sharpened for so many years that was an extremely thin blade. On the record, Sells had a lengthy criminal history, but was mostly filled with petty crimes and drugs since his childhood. And then in 1992, he had attacked and attempted to rape a 19-year-old woman, for which he served just 5 years for when he was released. But off the record, that was a very different story. After his January 1st, 2000 arrest, he told January 2nd, he told investigators that he was willing to confess to all of his crimes, but warned them that it was going to take a long time. So they set a date and a time for him to be formally interviewed on the record with video and audio recording, even allowing Harold Dow, a 48 Hours correspondent, to sit in on the interview, which had never been done before. But the date and time was not enough for the crimes that he had admitted to. It took 9 entire months for investigators to collect all of the details for every single murder that Sells confessed to. And after it was said and done, they confirmed that he had committed a total of 22 murders, but admitted to over 70, spanning from 1979 to 1999 and covered 6 states. Because the majority of them were from a time when he was drifting, hopping from freight train to freight train, just like the railroad or railway killer in Holly Dunn's case. Meaning, his first murders were when he was just 15 years old.
Oh my God.
With one of the crimes he admitted to being the Dardeen murders. He explained that he could not remember all of the details for every crime that he had committed, but he did remember the Dardeens. In the mid-1980s, Sells was living outside of St. Louis, working at traveling carnivals and fairs as a day laborer and stealing what he could to get by. He would often hitch rides with truckers or hop freight trains without any destination in mind. But it was by jumping trains that he became familiar with the Ina, Jefferson County area in Illinois. Sells claimed that on the day of November 17th, 1987, or he just really honestly says a random day. He couldn't remember the date. He was like, it was just a day in November of 1987. I think he actually even said fall. He either met Keith Dardeen at a truck stop or a local pool hall. The two just kind of hit it off, leading Keith to allegedly invite Sells over for dinner at the Dardeens' home, which he accepted. He said that after the meal, he was planning to move on and hop on a nearby train to his next unknown destination. However, he claims that before he could leave, Keith proposed a threesome with him and his 7-month pregnant wife, Elaine, which Sells said triggered him and triggered his anger. He declined, and he forced Keith at gunpoint to drive him to a nearby wheat field where he shot, killed, and mutilated Keith's body before returning to the trailer where he had tied up Elaine and Peter to torture and kill them, saying in a quote that I found in an interview with the Southern Illinoisan from 2010, quote, "I was just so pissed off that I took it to the maximum limit. Rage don't have a stop button." End quote, which he used as an excuse for why he killed the children as well. However, Sells later changed his story, saying that he had actually just jumped off the freight train in Ina and began walking around when he saw the Dardeens' trailer with the for sale sign in the front. He said that he went and he drank a few beers, waiting until dark before he went to the trailer and knocked on the door and told a defensive and very wary Keith, who did not want to open the door for him, which this makes more sense to me. Mm-hmm. Keith won't even unlock the door for a young woman coming to knock on the door and saying that she needs help, but he's going to invite Tommy Lynn Sells, a little fucking drifter, into dinner. Mm-hmm. No shot. Anyways, he said that he went and drank a few beers and he went back to the house, knocked on the door where he told a defensive and very wary Keith that he was interested in buying the trailer. According to Sells, Keith then stepped outside to speak with him, leaving the door unlocked, at which point he was able to overpower Keith, who was unarmed, and held him and Elaine at gunpoint, forcing Keith to bind and gag his wife and son with duct tape before forcing him into the car, driving him to the nearby field, nearby where he had gotten off the railroad tracks, where he sliced Keith's penis off in the car before shooting him and disposing of his body in the field, after which he returned to the trailer where he claims he raped Elaine, which there was no evidence of rape, but with her body going into spontaneous labor,
Right.
who knows, before he beat her, Peter, and the newborn to death. He then claims that he attempted to clean up and pose their bodies before driving the blood-soaked car to Benton and parking it outside of a police station as a fuck you. And then he walked to a nearby railroad where he hopped on the next train out of town. He became the number one suspect in the Dardeens murder because he allegedly knew details in the crime that to this day are still kept confidential, like the place that Keith was sitting in the car. However, he was never charged because of the lack of evidence and the majority of the information being public knowledge that he was able to confess to by the time that he did confess, and by adding details that only someone with a killer mindset would, like a fucked up mind, would think of. He might have been able to just honestly guess those details.
Yeah, I just feel unlikely. I don't know.
In that interview with the Southern Illinoisan from 2010 that I just recently referenced, Sells also said, quote, "I know people got their doubts. They say there's no physical evidence tying me to the Dardeens, but there wasn't for any of them because they wasn't looking for me. I moved. I was always transient," end quote. Like I said, though, investigators in Texas that led Sells' case were able to only confirm his involvement in 22 out of the 70 crimes that he had admitted to. But they believe, just like serial killer Henry Lee Lucas, who I cannot believe that I've not covered yet.
Yeah, I don't even know who that is.
He's really infamous historical serial killer in terms of like being researched and stuff. And I could have sworn that I covered him, but I couldn't find it anywhere on our episodes or anything. Right.
That name.
Anyways, I'm going to cover him in the future because I don't think I have already. But they believe that Tommy Lynn Sells was trying to copycat him by admitting to several crimes that he didn't even commit in order to avoid the death penalty by getting a plea deal, because he would confess and speak at length about his crimes. However, Illinois detectives could never fully investigate the way that they wanted to by specifically bringing Sells to Ina and having him identify the locations of the Dardeens' home and where Keith was discovered or where he got that beer at, because there was only like one bar in town. There was one gas station, a post office, a general store, I think a fire station. Like, they didn't even have a police station. The police station was in Benton.
Yeah.
So, like, he would have had to go there and, like, point out that's what they really wanted him to do. And he said that he could. He was like, I could show you exactly where I put him in that field.
Wow.
Right. So the Illinois detectives really wanted to bring him there, but they couldn't because Texas law prohibits prisoners that are on death row to be taken out of state, and the authorities in Texas were unwilling to make an exception for him. All of which led Jefferson County officials to decline filing murder charges against Sells for the Dardeen murders, but mainly due to lack of sufficient evidence. Tommy Lynn Sells was eventually executed on April 3rd, 2014 in Huntsville, Texas by lethal injection at the age of 49, but still remains the number one suspect in the otherwise cold case of the 1987 Dardeen family murders.
I mean, I get Texas's stance on that,
but
also like other families deserve answers.
Right.
And victims deserve justice. Like, you gotta like give a little bit of leniency to bring your own people with him.
Right. Like you guys can bring
like,
him.
yes, but for a 7-day period, and then he's back.
Right.
Like, make these restrictions.
48 hours, he has to be flown in, flown out.
You are in control of a serial killer.
A prolific serial killer.
Who is admitting, and these cases need to be closed, but now they're just going to sit in a cold case unit forever and ever and ever and ever. And also take up the time from detectives solving other cold case units.
Right.
When you can get an answer, proof.
Where he could come here and he could show us these locations that he claims to know, which would be sufficient enough evidence to be like, oh, yeah, then fuck yeah, he did it.
Right.
Now, I'm going to wrap up here with some questions that I'm sure many of you guys will have. No, I do not believe that there is any sort of DNA evidence in the case, mainly because I feel like they would have announced it already or tested it, especially when it came to ruling out Sells or charging him before his death for his potential involvement. And like, why would they not have tested it by now? Yes, one of the most commonly known public theories in this case is that this was the doing of a cult or a satanic group as a ritual. And just like investigators in the case, no, I do not think that was the case. That stems from it being satanic panic when it happened.
Right.
No, there has never been anything to suggest that Elaine was having an affair, which some sleuths suggest could have been the reason as to why she was tucked into the bed and Keith was killed elsewhere and killed the way that he was and mutilated. Also, no, there has never been anything to suggest that Keith was having an affair, which again, sleuths suggest is why his genitals were cut off, possibly by the husband of the woman that he was fucking. Yes, it does stand out to me that Keith was shot and mutilated, whereas Elaine, Peter, and baby Casey were beaten to death with a baseball bat found inside the home. I talked about that throughout.
It's like two completely different murders.
Two completely different methods, you know? Yes, it is a theory that Keith murdered his own family due to lack of sleep caused by his severe paranoia of someone harming his family, and went into a psychosis where he decided that no one could kill his family except for him. After killing them, he drove himself to that field where he cut off his own genitals as a way of quote unquote punishing himself before shooting himself. However, it would be really hard to shoot yourself three times in the face while also losing tons of blood from castrating yourself. So I do not think that is the case. And also that does not at all explain how his blood-soaked car would have been driven 11 miles south to Benton police station, you know? But all in all, if the fucking FBI profiling behavioral science unit couldn't even make enough sense of this to throw in their 2 cents, I truly do not believe that this case will ever be solved unless they somehow uncover DNA evidence after all of these years, which with the development of touch DNA technology is 100% a possibility. Unless, and this is what I'll leave you with, there has been someone on the inside that has compromised this case in some way, or someone that has paid off police to keep it cold. And if that is the case, which I don't know that I think it is, we truly will never know the truth. And that is the case.
I'm kind of sold on cells. I'm not going to lie. But I think it's because it's like the
only one that
answer.
makes sense, you know?
Yeah.
It's truly the only tangible thing that we have in this case.
Like, I don't think he did it and then killed himself. I think that's impossible.
Yeah, I think that's impossible.
I don't think it was an affair.
No, me either. Honest to God, I think the reason why cells and even the railroad Resendez Ramirez makes sense is because it's like, yeah, those motherfuckers were crazy and they were just killing people at random. Like this is very much an at random killing of a psychopath. Like think about the Clutter family murders, like that inspired BTK from I think it was like 1958 in Kansas, and it was just like a random farmhouse out in the middle of fucking nowhere. These 2 prisoners got in the car from like New York or something, drove overnight, passed by it. They knew people that had worked there, but either way, like drove there and killed this entire family at the farmhouse in a brutal, tied them up, did crazy shit because they felt like they had plenty of time. There was no rush. And they were covered by the fact that it was in a desolate area with no light because it was dark and in the middle of nowhere, which makes
Where was Cells living again?
He lived in many different places. But
at that time,
in the mid to late 80s, he was living in St. Louis, which is just an hour and 15 minutes to the west. And you want me to tell you how I actually came upon this case? This is actually crazy. My in-laws last week were on a cross-country road trip in their van, and I was tracking them during the major snowstorm that came through because I was clearly really worried about them. They were passing through Mount Vernon, and they were like, yeah, we're about an hour outside of St. Louis, which is where they were going to stop for the night. And so I was just, tracking them and like zooming in on the area, and I was like, damn, they ain't shit out there. Like, where y'all gonna be sleeping? What are you stopping and doing? And then I was like, wait, I know this area. Why do I know Ina? I looked up crimes in Ina, and that long list. Also, Ina is very well known for this very infamous case that took place there in 1924, where a reverend talked his best friend's wife that he was having an affair with to poison both her husband and his wife within like a 3-month period of each other.
Whoa.
Yeah, and she ended up getting a second trial. They were tried together. They both got life in prison. She got a second trial because she was like, I was literally told by this reverend who was my preacher that this is what I was supposed to do for God. And she got off and moved to Chicago and got married.
That's crazy.
That's crazy. So that's what like Ina was known for.
Yeah.
That's what Keith knew about Ina and also the Odell family.
Right.
On the LSD.
Yeah, I was asking where he lived because I was like, you know, yes, it hit local media.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it probably went to neighboring states, but surely wouldn't have went to Texas. Surely wouldn't have also went to...
No, it did go to St. Louis.
Well, I meant like, I was going to say like people in carnivals.
Oh, yeah, because they're
sitting
just
around
jumping
reading
around.
the fucking newspaper.
Right.
And for him to know that many details, it's not like the internet was a thing. He couldn't have went... Well, when did he get arrested?
He got arrested in
2001.
Well, 2000. It was January 1st or 2nd
Like,
of 2000.
it's not like he could get on and like Google the murders,
No.
you know? So like, I don't...
Well, I feel like when you're a serial killer, like what we
You
know
study
about
that.
like...
You hear about it and you're, like,
BTK,
constantly...
Yeah, he was like looking... He was going and pulling papers just to read about the crimes because it got him off. And Tommy Lynn Sells, kind of just like BTK, was willing to... And just like Edmund Kemper, was willing to like go into detail. Granted, we think that he was probably doing this because of his idol, Henry Lee Lucas, falsely admitting to crimes that he didn't commit as a way to try and trick or take advantage of the leniency or the kindness
that they're given when they spill.
Right. But then, you know, half of me is like, was this like an like it's kind of giving Boys on the Tracks with Mina Airport and Barry Seal and all that, like
Water District,
the fact that like this shit is so locked down, bitch.
Yeah.
Is crazy. Like there's stuff that's never been released to this fucking day.
Which is crazy.
Which
it's
is
been
crazy.
40 years.
It's been 40 years. So it almost makes me kind of hope that maybe they do have DNA, but it's such a small sample that they are not willing to just like willy-nilly have it tested by just anybody until it's so developed. Because, you know, even now we run into situations like how we talked about with oh my god, the case I covered recently with the lab that was from the Baylor Medical School couple.
Like they had one chance.
Yeah, they had one chance, and you know they had 2 samples, and it was what case was that? It was just so recent. But anyways, they had the big sample and they had a little sample. They sent the big sample off to CC Moore's lab. I think that's Parabon lab, and they destroyed the entire sample and didn't get anything from it. And then like 4 years later, they sent it to this new lab that's in Texas by that couple from Baylor, and they were able to pull they were able to get a thing, and it was like on the 4th of July. You remember that?
Yeah, I do.
God, I wish I could register what case that was. I don't know why it's not coming back right now, but maybe that's where they're at with it. They're like, because DNA testing is a destructive process, maybe they're not willing to run that risk.
Right, if it's so small.
Right.
Not yet.
Right, not yet.
Oh, that's a terrible, terrible, terribly sad, tragic case.
Right.
But your coverage was awesome.
Thank you so much. I spent beyond amount of time.
I love the structure.
Thank you.
Like how you went in at the end specifically, because I hated the story.
Yeah, horrific. I mean, literally one of the worst that we've covered in a long time.
But yeah, for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
Definitely up there.
I haven't gone down this dark of a path in a while.
Definitely up there.
Yeah.
And you guys can tell she's on her A game now.
Yeah, I'm back, bitches. Who's ready? I'm back, host. Who's ready to be traumatized? Like, truly, I am. We're back. So
it's great. So terrible. Sad.
So terrible.
Oh my God.
But we really gotta go. I can't even like wind y'all down from this, even though I really know y'all need to. Like, we can't even let you down easy.
It's been 2 hours and 22 minutes.
Yeah, and I have 24 hours to edit this.
I love you guys.
With like a bunch of meetings.
You want to wind down? Come on over to Patreon.
Yeah, we gotta go. Love you guys so much. It's 9:00 also. We're Patreon. You're getting your What's New Wednesday on Friday.
Thank God. All right, love you guys.
Morgan's gotta go home and go to bed. Love you guys so much. Talk to you guys on Tuesday with TBB. And by the way, they're all brand new.
Ooh.
So hey, also if you're listening to this on the day it comes out, let's say that you're listening to it before 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and you haven't submitted your aims or anything, or you haven't gone, and if you haven't gone over to our Instagram and taken our questions of the week quizzes, go right now.
Do it right now because they're being recorded at 3 p.m. Eastern Time.
Yep, probably 4 because we're yappers.
Let's make it 5.
Love
you,
you
bye.
guys. Bye.